Come what may, bring it on. I'm gonna love it.
Welcome to LDS Unmarried Life, a podcast for single members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who find themselves single either because they're divorced, widowed, or not yet married. There is no affiliation with the church. And if you have not gone to my website, go to AnnetteTalks.com, or you can find me on Facebook. This podcast is carried on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. And I'm getting ready to wind up the LDS Unmarried Life podcast. So if there's something that you would like to hear, let me know as soon as possible, because I'm reaching the year, and I don't think I'm going to be doing much past this. And so my guest has some sound going on in the background. What's going on over there, Jim?
Oh, that's my clock telling me it's time for us to get going.
All right, it's 9 p.m. and here we are. All right, so today I am joined by Jim Jacobs, and Jim has been on before. If you have not listened to any of my past podcasts with Jim, go back and find them. We had some fabulous episodes on depression, on addictions like pornography and sexual addictions, and dating advice, because Jim is a counselor and a dating coach, right? Jim, tell us what your credentials are.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be with you again. This is so much fun, and I appreciate what you've been doing for this past year. It's just awesome to have been involved and awesome to see this. I am a licensed clinical social worker with over 20 years of experience working with people in counseling and coaching, and I do some dating coaching. Actually, I wanted to announce tonight, just because of what you've been doing, that I'd like to offer people one free coaching session as well as $150 off. For signing up for 3 coaching sessions if you say that you mentioned this. The first session is always free, but if you want to sign off after that, if you tell me that you learned about it through this, then I would be happy to cut off $150 off of the coaching session. You can find out more information at jimrjacobs.com or drivinglessonsforlife.com, or you can find me and follow me on Facebook. And in the past, Annette, you've always posted a link to that on our thing. So look for that link and stuff like that. Give me a call. Let's talk. I'm more than happy to help. Dating is an interesting challenge. I remember reading a book when I was younger called Dating and Other Frightening Experiences. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. And please let me know how I can help. And again, I'm grateful to be involved again.
Wow, great. No, I am going to link on my website, AnnetteTalks.com, to drivinglessonsforlife.com. That's a great offer. You know, it's funny. Before we get into the topic, I used to kind of think the dating coaching was kind of silly until I just was in my last relationship where I really could have used some dating coaching, honestly. I'm starting to think it's a necessity, honestly, because it's just so difficult to navigate those waters, and it's such an important thing to be successful at, especially for those of us that want to get married, and especially for those of us who've been divorced and we don't want another divorce. So, which is kind of a segue into our topic.
Sure.
And the topic is going to be overcoming fear in dating. And the reason I'm doing this topic is because I received a message from one of my listeners asking for some advice on how to get back out there after her divorce. And she was looking for really specific advice, but I thought it would be better to get some more general advice that would apply to everyone that's out there. And so I went on to Facebook and I conducted a poll, and I asked people, why are you reluctant to get back out there after a divorce? And I received numerous responses, and actually it wasn't a poll. It was just I put out a call for answers, but there was a very common theme there, and the common themes that I saw, and this was mostly female responses, and I don't know if that's because it's just mostly women that are more willing to open up about this, or more women are more frustrated, or I don't know, but the common themes that I found was, first, it was fear. Fear of failure, either through, getting your heart broken, or just not finding anyone to date, or fear of finding someone, getting married, and then ending up in another divorce because you found someone just like your first spouse. And so fear was the biggest thing. And then after that was, for women, was their basically saying that they don't feel attractive enough, and they feel like they've been rejected because they're not attractive, because maybe it's just they're a little bit older and they don't look the same as they were when they were younger. And so I thought we would tackle this first coming from the fear aspect. And I can say it's a well-founded fear, because you get out there after you've been hurt, and yeah, you're likely to get hurt again. Because like I mentioned, I was just in a relationship, and it lasted about 3 months, and I'm the one that ended it, but I'm still feeling the effects of it. I mean, it was a good relationship, and we're still friends, and it ended well. But here I am back in the single scene again, and thinking, am I ever going to find someone, or am I just going to have to go through one relationship after another? And so and there's the fear in the back of my mind of, ending up with another divorce, which is the last thing I want. So what do you think here, Jim? What's some good advice for those of us out here who are kind of really afraid to get back out there again?
Yeah, well, I sure appreciate this topic, and I'm actually really grateful for the respondents, those who chose to respond. I don't know whether there's a reason why men don't respond as much or whatever, but I'm grateful for those who decided to respond, because I think the questions that you got, or the statements that you got, indicate a kind of very real fear for all of us when we're going into the dating scene, and the fear of making the wrong choice, the fear of never having a choice, the fear of never getting a chance to be married or to get remarried, the fear of a divorce, the fear of something bad happening. I mean, those are just the reality of the dating world. And so, as I said with that book that I read when I was younger, Dating and Other Frightening Experiences, dating is a frightening experience. We're putting ourselves out on the line. And for most of us probably listening to this, like it seems like from the responses that you got, most of the fears were associated with those who had been married previously, those that commented. And so I think, and as we've talked before, like, fear is just part of the game. And if we can learn to see that those fears are just part of the game, first of all, I mean, I don't know that there's such thing as a no fear dating approach. I don't think we can put on a t-shirt that says no fear and sign up for Mutual or for Plan or Match.com and not experience the fear. That we're going to have that. And just your example that you were willing to share of just that feeling of, okay, a relationship just ended. There was probably reasons for that. I'm sure there was. And now the thought of putting yourself back out there again is naturally going to evoke fears in us.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because after the relationship ended, I went to this barn dance that we had here in town. And it had been the first time I'd gone to a singles thing in about 3 months, because I've been out doing this relationship thing, right? And re-entry was very difficult, coming back and realizing I'm starting all over again, and looking around and not seeing a whole lot of great options. It was difficult. Honestly, the only thing that helped me through it was that I was sat next to about 3 ladies who were going through something very similar. I was not alone at all. Yeah. So
if we can get to that point where we normalize it, I mean, I remember that fear, the first time getting out of the car to go into a singles activity, like, just, how is this going to go? How's it? And that fear didn't go away for the second time or the third time. I mean, that first trying to get a phone number, or trying to, offer a phone number, or to ask a question online, or to make that phone call. I mean, it's just all frightening. I think what we can do is, like, maybe turn the fear upside down just a little bit, that as a professional, if I had the opportunity to work with someone that wasn't afraid, to me, that would be frightening. because fear is an intelligent thing, which is fear especially after we've been hurt, especially after maybe something that we worked at for 20 years or 25 years and we put all of our effort into it, and then there was some betrayal or pornography problem, or someone was unfaithful or just gave up or whatever, or maybe we don't even know why it ended. If we didn't have fear going into the next relationship, that would be bizarre.
Yeah.
We've just had our heart broken, and now we're going to try to like put ourselves out there again, and we're going to try to do that again when the same thing could happen, the same hurt could happen, or that we may not be accepted or whatever. So I think what we have to look at is that fear is actually one of our best friends in dating, because it's going to cause us to be more awake. And before we started today, I was mentioning a little bit about how many of us didn't have a whole lot of fear when we were 19 or 20 or just got back from our missions or whatever. And we met somebody and we dated for 2 weeks, and then we were planning our temple date, stuff like that. There may not have been enough fear in those younger years. Well, now we've got some experience, we've got some knowledge, we've got some heartbreak. So that fear actually could be mobilizing for us. If we're afraid, then we are in a place to be careful, to slow down, to make wiser choices. When that fear goes away, it could be a sign that something good is happening, that we've had enough experience with each other. Like one of our previous podcasts where we talked about how to know if you can trust somebody and stuff like that.
Right.
When the fear starts to go away, it could indicate things are going well. Or when the fear goes away, it could mean that the hormones have taken over and the loneliness has taken over and we're not thinking clearly. But if we will listen to the fear and let it help us guide us so that we make a decision that won't repeat the same mistakes. We won't choose the same partner. We won't follow in the same pathway that maybe we followed beforehand. So does that help a little bit to say like fear is something that's actually good for us?
Right. So it's like it's a teacher. It's the experience that we've had in the past that can teach us what we need to be watching for going forward. It reminds me, it's funny because when I was at that dance with my friends, and I stepped outside for a few minutes because I needed to be away from the group. You just need that. It was a little overwhelming. And I went outside for a little while and I was just walking around by myself. And then a few of my friends came over and I looked at my one friend and I said, you know what? I feel like I'm free falling without a net. And she says, but you are a net. And I said, you're right. I mean, it was so funny. I said, but I am here for me now. And so it was really funny the way we put it. But what I just went through with this relationship taught me a few things. And the one of the biggest things that it taught me was that I did really well in this relationship. And I can compare it to the way things went in the past. And I can see a huge growth that happened from watching the way I handled the last relationship. And so I think I got past the fear and I got into the relationship and I pushed through the fear because it was really hard for me to trust enough to get into that relationship in the first place. But I kept going and I kept going and I kept going. And at the end of it, I looked back and I said, okay, this one didn't work out, but I learned some things about myself. And so even though it was difficult to get through it, it was such a great learning experience. And now going forward, I know a few more things that I want, that I need in a relationship that I didn't get in that one. So it was a total learning experience.
Yeah.
So I think even though we're afraid to get into the experiences, sometimes we need to know that if nothing else, we're going to learn something from them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I might, I have to use a driving analogy or whatever, because driving lessons for life. But if we could look at the fear maybe as a gauge or a light on our dashboard going off, and look at that as something to pay attention to. Like if I'm not leaving the home, or if I'm not signing on to my online dating profile, or if I'm not accepting any dates, or I'm not going to a singles activity or whatever, then that fear is a light on the dashboard that says, hey, there's something going on underneath the hood. And if we're willing to get curious and pay attention to that, it's going to give us helpful information. So if we looked at that example that you just gave, that you must have felt something in the process of moving forward. And because you paid attention to it, it guided you to be able to look at making hard decisions, difficult decisions, and you move forward that when I've paid attention to my fear in the dating, it has helped me to get more clear about what I want. It's helped me to go, maybe something's happening here. Do I need more information? Do I need to take more time? Are they pressuring me to go too fast? I've had that situation where, but I guess not getting into the specifics about that, but if we will pay attention to that light on the dashboard and take just a few moments to look into it, pay attention to it, we can see that it will be guiding us. And I love your story because it illustrates one of my favorite quotes is that the bravest among us are the brokenhearted because they dared to love. And so the bravery that you showed by saying, I'm afraid of getting rejected again. I'm afraid of being single again. I'm afraid of this, but I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try again. And I'm going to face some of those fears. And I may get my heart broken. But if I don't put myself out there, then I'll never get the chance. I'll never get to go there. I sometimes will say it this way in my work with people is that if I let you come close enough to me to give me a hug, you're also close enough to punch me. But that's a risk I want to take because I don't want to miss out on the hugs.
Right.
I don't want my fear of getting punched to cause me to never get hugged. So being brave is to say we look at that fear and we intelligently evaluate it. If you've been divorced and you're not afraid of that happening again, then I don't know what kind of mental skills you have or whatever to be able to do that, or you're in denial or you need help or something like that, because I don't know how you could not be afraid of that again. If you've been betrayed by your spouse with pornography or infidelity or something like that, and you're not afraid of somebody doing that to you again, then I don't know what you're doing or whatever. So pay attention to the fear, embrace it, and then look at if you want the hug, you've got to take the risk of the punch. And so you put yourself out there and you try to go forward with it.
Well, and I think too, I like the analogy about the punch because if you're out there long enough, I think then you start to recognize if someone is going to punch you, then you recognize that and you duck, right? Like, so you trust that you'll be able to duck or recognize that that's the kind of person that would punch you and not let them in close enough to hug you. So a lot of times I feel like our fear is not the fear of the other person as much as it is a fear of ourselves not being able to handle what comes along. So if you get out there and get enough experience and you show yourself that you can handle things, then you'll trust yourself more. And so the next time it won't be quite as scary. And now that I've got through, like this relationship that I just got out of was my first, I'm really proud of myself because it was my first functional relationship since the divorce. And I learned so much about myself. And actually, the breakup was hard, but I've learned a ton about myself from the breakup as well and the aftermath. And, I'm still in it, but every day I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that I would have this reaction. What does this mean? And it's made me go in and address some more issues with myself. And also makes me think I'm going to handle the next relationship a little bit differently because there are some things that I learned about myself that I'd like to, make some adjustments to. But if I hadn't gone forward and gotten into that relationship, even though I was afraid, I would not have learned all those things about myself. And I would not have realized that I am strong enough to survive a failed relationship.
Yeah.
So, I'm ready to get out there again.
And I think with dating too, like your example illustrates, is part of what we know with dating is that the idea is that you're getting a chance to try somebody out. You're getting a chance to try it. And if that doesn't make you nervous, then again, you're not paying attention. You're maybe running into something too naively or too much with your hormones or whatever, versus kind of saying, I'm going to approach this careful. When you're afraid, you're careful. Mm-hmm. When you're afraid, you take steps. Now, some of us, we feel so much fear that we get paralyzed. That's when something like coaching or interacting with your friends can be helpful, because I look at sometimes like typically when I do coaching for dating type stuff, we start with just kind of where are you at with your dating profile? How do you respond to people? And oftentimes if we're so afraid that we're not really willing to put ourselves out there, we're not really willing to share, then that of course is going to affect our success or whatever. But if we allow that fear to teach us what we need to know, and that's what you're saying from your example, is you put yourself out there, you were vulnerable, you were brave, you were risking a broken heart, you were risking the punch, if you will. And it doesn't sound like you got punched, but it sounded like you recognized this is not a pathway I want to go down. And while that hurts, what we look at is you are now better prepared, as you're saying, for that next step, which may result in less fear. It may not, but it may result in less fear because you went, now I know myself a little bit more. So I want to allow my fear to guide me. And if I feel afraid of something, then I'm going to pause. I'm gonna see that as a yellow light, and that's time to slow down, look around, figure out what's going on. If I just run that yellow light and run the red light that's coming right after it, then my fear is not going to help me like I would want it to. So we've got to put ourselves out there. Coaching can help with that. Talking to our friends can help with that. When you did what you did, where you're just talking to the other women, that normalized it for you, that this is kind of frightening. This is kind of scary. And I love that your friend joked about it, and that helped you, like, to say, well, you are in that, you know?
Yeah.
But what she was really saying is, I get it. You know, me too. Like, I don't really know how to do this. I hadn't planned on doing this. It's kind of creepy and it's kind of scary. But if we can do it together, this podcast has been brilliant because it's helping to normalize what we're all feeling. It's helping us to recognize that dating is kind of frightening. None of us have taken a class on it. You know, we're trying to learn how to do it. And when we do it together, when we do it with support, when we invest in the things that would help us to overcome those fears, or then invest in the listening to those fears, lifting the hood and looking at what's going on, why that light's flashing, we're often going to find our most helpful information to be braver and take the risk of being brokenhearted again.
Yeah, and I think that it's hugely important that people realize that we are all afraid. This is, and that has been one good thing about the podcast, is that I've had a lot of people reach out and say, I didn't realize that so many other people are going through what I'm going through. I think it's really easy when you're divorced, especially, and also not married, never married, or widowed. I think it's easy when you're alone to feel like you're alone. Like there's nobody else out there going through this. You're all by yourself. And it's just not the case. There are a bunch of us out here that feel really alone, but we're all going through something very similar. So This is definitely not unique to be sitting at home looking at profiles going, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, and something about dating brings out the perfecting, performing, and pleasing natures of us that we feel like we have to put on an act, or we feel like we have to hide who we are. They won't like me. They won't accept me. They won't. I don't have anything to offer, or whatever. And so we sometimes deal with that fear by trying to perfect, trying to please, trying to perform, rather than kind of saying, let's slow down and listen to that fear and be intelligent about what we're going into. And it means something. If we're afraid, it means something. God gave us these feelings so that we could learn, so that we could have experience gaining from each other. But when we start perfecting, when we start performing, when we start people pleasing, then we lose our authenticity, and then we're more likely to end up making the fear come true because we're faking it. We're acting like there's something we're not. I think the other thing that fear often causes people to do in their dating is that we're on a date, we're interacting with someone, we've maybe been lonely, which none of us like that. That's a fearful thing kind of as it is, just like, am I always going to be alone? Am I always going to have that? So even when we're not dating, we might have fear. But one of the things that happens, and it's pretty significant for us as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is we will often gravitate to something that's more comfortable for us to be able to manage that fear. And this is where I see in my work singles getting too physically involved. So then they start to move to kissing or making out or holding hands, and then all of a sudden things are progressing and we're cuddling on the couch and we're traveling together, and then we have problems with the law of chastity. Oftentimes that is our attempt to overcome our fear by trying to hotwire connection. So maybe this connection, this physical kissing, maybe the hugging and the closeness, and then pretty soon we're doing stuff that we don't feel okay with, and then we end up getting really hurt. that's often something to look at, is that often we will gravitate to what will hotwire the connection, because that physical is easier than looking at the fear and saying, there's a reason why I feel afraid. And believe me, I'm not going forward in my dating experience until the fear is gone with the individual person that I'm dating. I'm not going to take the next step, because I'm going to let my fear guide me, and I'm going to be careful about trying to hotwire connection. Or if I find myself performing or trying to act perfect or trying to act like I have all the answers, or that I'm, I don't have any fears or whatever, then I'm more likely to create the very thing that I'm trying to prevent.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think it's that raises an issue that I think I see myself doing sometimes too. Is, you're out on a date and you want the person to like you, so you try to act in a way that you think that person will like, which is a big setup for failure, because if you can't be yourself and the person doesn't like you as yourself, then what's the point to the whole thing, right? So it's better to once you're comfortable enough with that person, to let them really see what your personality is. That doesn't mean you have to dump everything on them, like we've talked about that in another episode, but
right.
It's better to go ahead and be yourself, so that you can find someone who's a good match for you as yourself, as opposed to you as who you think that person would want to be with.
Well, and if you really look at it, if that's going to make your fears come true even more, because if you fake it and you progress and then you develop feelings and they develop feelings for you, at some point the real you is going to come to the stage. At some point it's really going to show up. And a lot of times people, that's when the breakup happens, when they let their hair down, metaphorically speaking, and they start showing the real you. Then the person's like, well, what happened to that other person that was here that I was kind of attracted to? So we put ourselves in these positions. Again, we do that to hotwire connection. We're uncomfortable, we feel afraid, and we want to gravitate to performing, to kind of putting on that face, or we try to imagine what they want or what they're thinking or whatever, rather than just being yourself. And I know that's scary, because if you put yourself out there, you might get broken. Yeah. You might get a broken heart. You might get hurt. But the key is that if we keep getting up, as you said, with your example, as we keep getting up, what happens is that we become braver. We start to learn from those fears. We start to get better at handling those fears. Those that sit at home and just fantasize about doing it, or those who, even worse, go out there and pretend and fake it, they never get the true experience. And when the true stuff comes out, you wish that you hadn't hotwired that connection. You wish that you had really figured out what the key looks like and taken your time to get the key, so that you could start the engine together in a very wholesome and wonderful way. So if you're pretending or you're performing, step back and look at what you're afraid of. What is it that you know? It may just be that you don't know the person that well. Well, that's helpful information. Get to know them better. It might be that you're moving too fast, so slow down. It might be that you're ignoring something that's a red flag. If you don't have fear, you won't see that. So use the fear of the things like, I'm afraid of marrying the wrong person, or I'm afraid of, having a repeat. Elder Oaks, in his classic General Conference talk on divorce, which is interesting. If you go look for it, you can look for it on churchofjesuschrist.org, or just Google divorce and Oaks and you'll find it. It's interesting. It's not really a talk about divorce. Like, the first third of the talk talks about divorce and kind of reasons for divorce. And many of us who have been through that have studied that talk and read through that and been helped by that talk. But the latter 2/3 of the talk are really about marriage and relationships. And one of the things that he says in there is the best way to avoid a marriage ending is to choose right in the first place. But then he says, inquire well. And one of the best ways to overcome fear in dating is to slow it down enough that you can inquire well. And inquiring well is asking questions, looking into it. If you have common friends, it's asking about them. It's going on group dates. It's asking your friends, have my behavior changed a lot since I started dating? Am I losing myself in this? Am I pretending? Am I faking? Like, inquire well about your own behavior. You could use the braving thing we talked about in the last podcast, or inquire well by making sure you have time to ask the important questions that should be asked when you're dating someone. We talked about that in the pornography one. How do you find out about pornography with someone, whatever? Inquire well. ask the question, be available, and that's going to help. So slow it all down, inquire well, ask about why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, and ask about why what you need to know about that person. And the best way to prevent a divorce is to inquire well when you're dating.
Great. Yeah, I saw that talk. I actually used part of that in my book, The Dating After Divorce book, because I think we were looking at long distance. It was in the long distance relationship chapter because it's harder to get to know someone long distance. And so that was one of the discussions that I had in there, was really, really doing your due diligence about the other person. And not only that, but if, like you said, if things are showing up for you, inquiring, and I would say inquiring in yourself, if something keeps coming up with you, like fear of rejection or something like that, then that's a good opportunity to do some exploring in your own self. Like, why is that fear there? And how do I address that? And that's where a good counselor, dating coach can come in handy, because they can look at your history and talk to you about, well, let's look at your history and why do you think this is popping up, and how, let's talk about this. Let's explore that. Now, I'm wondering, like with dating coaching, is this the kind of thing where someone who's your client could call you up and say, so this is what I had, this date tonight, and this is how it went, and what do you think, and where should I go next, kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sometimes the best thing in the world for fear, when we hold it inside, it grows. Like it's like a fungus. It just gets bigger and bigger. Fear is like a fungus in that way. But having someone to talk to, it doesn't have to be a coach, but it could be. One of the advantages of a coach is it's obviously someone who's not a part of your old world, and they're not going to say, well, when are you ever going to get married? Like your mom might say, or or you're never going to get married, like your brother might say, or something like that. But like talking to a coach is going to be someone to say, hey, let's look into that. Let's get curious about that. Let's focus on that. And let's talk about how you might do something different. Or let's talk about how you could figure out what you're afraid of. Like you're afraid of this with this person. Let's talk about what's going on that you have that fear, that your fear of rejection is so big that you can't catch up, or your fear of how you look, or your fear that you're not cool enough, or whatever might be going through your head. Let's look at that and let's work on that. So yeah, coaching would be great for something like that. A quick phone call to say, help me talk through this and figure out what's holding me back. That's what coaches and counselors do, is let's figure out the obstacles and let's get over them. Let's learn a new skill. I mean, to be frank with this, dating requires more of us than many other social activities that you and I engage in, because we are so trying to pay attention. We're so trying to learn. We're also worried about how they're going to evaluate this. It's like a job interview on steroids. And so there's so much going into it. And so relying on having people to support us through that is going to help ease that fear, help us approach that fear intelligently. We need to manage the fear so that the fear doesn't manage us.
Yes, thank you. And also there are issues that may not even come up until you do start dating someone, because there are things that you might have been not having to deal with since your divorce, because you haven't been in a relationship. And you may not even realize it is an issue until you start dating someone. Then, something just popped up, you just got triggered by something. And so I think I am more and more convinced that you really need someone to help you out when you're dating, whether it's a dating coach or a wise friend or whatever. Because it is, like you said,
bishops, we all have ministering brothers and sisters. And maybe if we would try trusting them, that they would help us with that. Because sometimes you need to bounce your fear, or those issues that pop up that cause the fear. Sometimes you need to bounce those off somebody else so that you can figure those out. And I love to do that. I love to help people with that, to find those things, to find your brave, to be able to face your fear, and to try to resolve maybe some things that have popped up that are causing those fears. I mean, that's what a coaching and relationship coaching and counseling is all about, is let's work through that.
Great. So the other issue that I brought up earlier that was a part of this response on Facebook was that, and it mostly came from women, but I think both men and women tend to suffer from this, especially divorced and middle-aged folks like ourselves. The women
Right.
especially have said that a lot of them say they're not dating because they're not being asked out this is their assumption. And I don't know how much evidence they have of this, but their assumption is that they're not attractive enough. The women feel too heavy, too old, like they can't compete with the younger, thinner, prettier women. And we were talking before, and you said men go through something similar.
Sure. Yeah. And I don't know, on some of the singles Facebook pages that are designated for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or whatever, you often see some men expressing that more. But I just think women are probably more comfortable voicing it, whereas a man's going to maybe either be in denial of it or pretend like it, or maybe that's why he's not putting himself out there, because he's got that fear of it. With women, though, it's a unique kind of thing. You were laughing at me a little bit before we started, because you're like, I can't believe you understand women that way or whatever. But part of what we have to look at that's going on, especially for women, is just that compare and despair factor, which is when a woman walks in the room, the men are looking at the woman, but all the women are too. And the women are either hating her, like, I hate her hair, or I hate her, or this, I hate her skirt, I hate her, or they're judging her, like, oh, she shouldn't have worn that, or oh my gosh, she looks that way. Or they're envying her and saying, oh my gosh, I wish I looked like that, and stuff like that. And so we know that women tend to be cruel to women, and they tend to be cruel to themselves because of this comparison kind of thing. And so what we might look at is there is decades of research on this particular topic. And women, you got to get real about this, which is there are some men that are only interested in a Barbie. I mean, that's just reality. There are some men out there that's all they're looking for, and you don't want them anyway. Like, if there's a man out there, you want to rule him out right away. Like, if there's a guy that, if a guy's not choosing you because all he superficially wants is someone who looks like Barbie or whatever kind of thing, then that's not the guy you want anyway. He's not going to go the distance. He's going to be the guy looking at pornography. He's going to be the guy you don't want to be with. But one of the things we know about attractiveness, again, this is decades of research on men, is that men are not attracted to what we stereotypically think men are attracted to. And the media has ruined us this regard. And then women's comparison and judging each other and judging themselves is also feeding that, is that men will over and over again say they do not want to marry someone that's like the anorexic 17-year-old, 6-foot-tall, abnormal woman that we see in the media. Men will tell you over and over again, the thing that is most attractive to men, according to the research, when we interview thousands of men and we research them, the most attractive thing to men is first effort. Did you take care of yourself? Did you? And interestingly enough, if we ask women, what do you like? Oftentimes they say the exact same thing. A man who tries to take care of himself, a man who tries to smell good, a man who tries to whatever, is that we've overplayed this because we live in the media. We live inside the great and spacious building because of the media, and we're overplaying this attractiveness thing. Again, there are men and women who are completely, absolutely superficial about this. It's absolutely a truth. But that's not who we're looking for. So what a man's going to be attracted to is a woman who can develop confidence in herself and show that by the efforts that she makes to be a confident woman. I can tell you there's nothing more attractive than a woman who walks into the room and she's not thinking about herself, but she has done everything within her power to take care of her body, to look good, to dress nicely, and to be kind. Elder Holland once said, make yourself as good as you can, and then forget yourself when you walk out the door. Actually, it was Sister Tanner. He was commenting on it. It was Sister Tanner, former Young Women's President, said her mom taught her to get herself as beautiful as she could, and then go out of the home and forget herself and think about others. That is so attractive. The most attractive women that I've ever had the experience of dating were not the ones that were looking like Barbie. They're the ones that demonstrated a quiet confidence, a certainty about themselves, and they showed it by the efforts that they made to take care of themselves mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Men are incredibly attracted to effort, and I've not seen a woman that isn't the same way. A man that doesn't take care of himself, who's not making any effort to look good or to take care of himself or to be active or to whatever, most women aren't very attracted to that. Is that true, Annette? Like,
Oh,
like
yeah.
a guy who shows up for the date and he doesn't smell nice and he like doesn't, you're not sure he took a shower today before the date. Like, I remember the first time I met you, you had told me in some sort of interaction that we had made that you like dark chocolate. I showed up with dark chocolate. I don't know if that made you more attractive to me, it made me more attractive to you, but I made an effort to stop at the store on the way to bring some dark chocolate because I knew both of you and I were nervous about meeting and talking about podcasting and all of that kind of stuff. And we were both single people and whatever kind of thing. It's those little things like that. It's the efforts that we make that are attractive. Attractiveness is not just defined by this narrow window of do you fit the stereotypical perfect person that the media throws in our face constantly. Attractiveness is really about what you do with what you have. And do you take the effort to do that? All of us have known somebody that we didn't find that attractive at first, but now they're one of the most beautiful people in our lives. We have friends like that initially we weren't that attracted to them. So attractiveness is not this simple thing. And women are hurting themselves more in the dating world by playing that message over and over again. I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm too that, well, whatever. Well, I'm sorry, I'm middle-aged. I don't look as good as I used to. I don't have the energy that I used to. That bothers me. It makes me uncomfortable. I'm worried that you're judging me, but I'm going to put what I have out there, and I'm going to tell you I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to comb my hair, get a haircut. I'm going to shave. I'm going to look nice because I'm going to believe that you're more attracted than a guy. You're more attracted to a guy who is as a whole person, that he knows who he is and that he takes care of who he is. And that's what I would just challenge you at, is that if especially women, you are overplaying that. Again, there is some truth to it for both men and women, that there are women and men out there who are superficial and that's all they're looking for. And that's the only people they'll talk to online or whatever. But they're the people we really want. They're attracted to the effort to take care of yourself and present yourself as an authentic, striving person.
Wow.
I'll jump to my soapbox now. So that
Jim,
I have some passion about that. So
I think the monologue that you just gave is probably the favorite part of any of my podcasts that I've done so far. And because, first of all, it all completely rings true from what you said about comparisons at the beginning, how women compare. You're in our head, because honestly, I'm totally guilty of this. If I go somewhere, either I'm jealous because the women are skinnier and prettier, or I'm glad because I'm not as unattractive as other women. And I catch myself doing it and I realize it's stupid and I have to stop myself. But it's always the first instinct, and I have to stop myself every time. Also, the guy that I just was dating, we had a discussion early on because my mom body shamed us girls growing up, and so it's always been an issue for me. And so I mentioned it to him early on, and he said, men don't really care about that. And I was like, and so I thought, okay, here's a guy I was frank with, and he said that doesn't really matter. And so I know that's true. I think a lot of times us women get it into our head that all men are like what you said is the small minority of jerky guys that we don't want. I think we get into our head, and because we've been conditioned either by, sorry, mom, mothers, grandmother. I had both grandmothers and my mom drill into us girls that we were supposed to be thin. And then society does the same thing.
Pornography does it. You know, if you had a spouse if you had a husband that looked at pornography in your first marriage, I mean, it just adds to that, and then Hollywood adds to that, and we're following, you know, us and people and all that stuff, and so yeah, the pressure is huge, and the onslaught of body shaming and comparing and despairing and analyzing and judging and all of that is just it's a full contact sport.
It is, and it's terrible, and so, but I think I know that you're right, because the guy that I just dated said it was that men don't care. I was married to a guy, even though that marriage failed for other reasons. Never, ever did he ever once say anything to me about not being attractive, and I am not a skinny mini. And I've had plenty of men ask me out, and I've been told that confidence is attractive. And when I look at a man, yes, confidence is probably the number one thing that I look for. Because if I don't see it, I'm not attracted right off the bat. And also, it makes me think of there have been a lot of women that I've known over the years that I would not consider to be attractive, objectively attractive. They don't have the body shape that we all think that they need to have or whatever, but they're groomed, they're well groomed, they carry themselves well, they're kind, they're nice, and I think that is an attractive lady. And not because she's got the physical features or the physical form that I'm looking for, but because it's like what you said before. She carries herself with confidence and she's concerned with other people. And I think that's huge. And I'm really, really glad that you brought it up. And I'm really glad that you mentioned the studies that were done. And so this is not just, this is how you feel. Right. No.
It's just fascinating that when we really take it down to its core, especially those of us that have had some experience, we're maybe more mature, we've been refined a little bit by some hard times. There are some that are looking for, the superficial, the Botox or whatever, the fake or the whatever kind of thing. There are truly some people like that. But really what most of us want is we're looking for someone who can go the distance. And that is attractive when you see the confidence, when you see the certainty, when you see someone who feels sure about themselves, someone who takes care of themselves, and they can light up the room when they come in. And when you think about some of our general authorities and the general officers of the church, most of them don't fit the stereotypical kind of thing. But when some of those women walk in the room, we are in awe. We are humbled. We are grateful for them. We're not looking at them going, "Oh man," well, maybe some people are, but what we need to look at is that confidence is attractive, an effort to take care of yourself, an effort to improve yourself, an effort to be better. So if you're struggling with fear about your body shape, your body size, I'm not attractive, please don't overplay that. Talk to a coach, talk to a counselor, talk to your friends, and then do what you can to develop that confidence. Maybe you need to see a counselor to develop confidence in your own skin and to love the body that you're in and to love the person that you are. I think it's amazing that a woman has had children. I think that's the most amazing thing that anybody could ever do on the earth, and that's attractive from a woman who's confident about that. A woman who's confident in her role as a mother and confident in who she is, and she's doing all that she can to take care of herself. That's a good thing. And so that could help overcome that fear, is really kind of looking inside and saying, am I making this up? Am I overplaying the attractiveness card? Now, we talked about before we started, Annette, that the online dating magnifies the attractiveness issue. And so let's just be real about that. Mutual, Planet, Match.com, Tinder, whatever, in the days past, a long, long time ago when people dated, you had maybe 4 or 5 options, to choose from, so certainly when you're in the online stuff, but what I would say is that women often will overplay that and be scared to do anything online, because they're like, oh, I'm not getting any action. And so your brain automatically wants to explain, why is nobody messaging me? Why did they message me back? And because women do what you said, that critical, judgmental, judging themselves or judging others, they will say, oh, well, it's because there's 1,000 other really attractive women on here and I don't look that way or whatever. So a coach, like part of what I would do with coaching is oftentimes I'll look at a profile and say, well, let's look at the pictures you chose. Let's look at what you're putting out there, first of all, because if you're approaching it with fear and trepidation and you're afraid to put the picture on there, frankly, I've seen some of the dating sites and the pictures that we choose. I would never choose. I mean, I wanted to partner with a photographer and say, let's figure out how to help people create a dating profile that accentuates the confidence, the effort, or whatever, but be cautious, because the online type setting, the websites, that kind of stuff tends to magnify both the insecurity of women, because you can see that there's thousands of other women on there, and for those who are superficially looking for just someone attractive, that's going to magnify that as well.
Right. Well, and something else I think that women and men as well need to be careful of is to not let that become an excuse for not engaging as well. Because I think it's too easy to say, well, no one's going to date me anyway, I'm not attractive, and then just like hide in their shell and not come out. And I think you're right as far as especially getting a good photographer. Anyone can take a good picture. I mean, if you get the right person taking a picture, you're smiling, you're happy, you get a good angle, good lighting, you can get a good picture. You don't have to be a model to have a good picture. So I think you're right. I see a lot of pictures on there where I think, when I'm only looking at the men, but I always want to say, first of all, don't look down at your phone and take a picture. I don't know why men do that, but
frankly, I stink at selfies. So if you were to look at my dating profile, there's no selfies on there because they're just not flattering for me because I don't know how to do it, or I'm too old, or whatever. But get somebody to help you. Take some pictures. Hire a coach. Get a friend to look at your pictures and say, can we do something different? Like change the lighting. If you've got an ugly selfie as your profile picture, then it may look like you don't care about how you look, or it may look like you're not confident about yourself. And so yeah, I mean, find your friend that takes good pictures, or just hand somebody else your phone and have them take a picture of you. But those are things that are important to look at because the online setting can magnify our fears about attractiveness because there is this plethora of choices, and you can just swipe up or swipe down. And I hope women will be honest that you do it too. That there are men that you won't message because your first thing you see is their picture. Let's be honest about it. We all do it, and we need to kind of step behind that and go, how can I find out if this person possesses the attributes that I want in a companion, like confidence, certainty, spirituality, etc.
Right. And I would say yet another story I have with that is the relationship that I was just in. The first time he messaged me, I was like, no, and I didn't respond. And then he messaged me again, and he said something that was interesting enough that caught my attention, and I did respond, and it ended up being a good relationship. It was a good experience, and so it's a good example to all of us to not judge so quickly, and say, well, no, let's look a little bit further.
Don't you think mutual reinforces that because you look at it and swipe? You look at it and swipe, and what is that teaching us? It's teaching us to evaluate people based on how they look rather than slowing it down and evaluating people based on who they are. And you can't judge confidence on a picture. You can't judge effort from a picture. I mean, you may be able to see a little bit or indicators of that. If there's a lot of spelling errors and other things, and you might go, okay, there wasn't a lot of effort in this. But for the most part, what we're going to look at is we need to take the time to get to know each other. We need to message each other. We need to be less quick to just grab that first picture and say, swipe, no, I don't even want to invest my time. Women, we do it. Women do it. Men do it. Let's slow down and focus on what we really want.
Yeah, and you spell check people. I actually posted on Facebook the other day because I got out of the relationship. I got back on Planet, and one of the first guys that hit on my picture, I read his profile, and it was full of misspellings. And the one that caught my attention the most that I had to repeat on Facebook because it was so funny, it says, "I live life to the foulest." FOULES. I was like,
oh, wow.
Really? I'm not sure what that means, but I'm not going to be messaging this person. So
it sounds like it stinks to me.
So, well, good. This has been awesome. I got a lot out of this. This is one of the reasons why I like to interview you for these podcasts, is because I always take away a huge amount from this.
Well, and if you stop doing this, we're going to miss you because you've done a great work and it's been a good thing. I hope people will go back and review these and reach out, ask questions, hire a coach, talk to your friends, get support. It's a scary thing that we're doing, putting ourselves out there, but the bravest among us are the ones who risk being loved, risk breaking that heart. Because if you never risk breaking your heart, I promise you'll never have somebody grab a hold of it and love that to death. So you might be afraid of getting punched, but keep trying to go in for that hug because it is so awesome.
Great. Yeah, I think that it's totally worth it. I mean, we're looking for eternal companionship here. So we have to be willing to risk if we want that great reward. I think it's worth it. I'm willing to risk a little heartbreak and other things to get that. So thank you, Jim.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me again.
Again, I will link to drivinglessonsforlife.com on my website, AnnetteTalks.com. If you have not listened to this podcast, other episodes, go and listen to some other ones, especially the ones with Jim. Those are probably my favorite. You can also, as I mentioned, find this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify. I think that's all of them. Anyway, as I am going to be wrapping up this podcast in the next month or so, but my next podcast, I will also be addressing single issues. It just won't be the main focus of the podcast. So hopefully those of you that have been listening to this podcast will come and join me at the second podcast, which will be rolling out in the next month or two. So
exciting stuff. I wish you luck with that. And please, everybody, don't forget that if you want some discount in the coaching, $150 off 4 sessions, $150 off. Your first one's free. Let me know if I can be helpful. Another website that's easy to get some more information on is jimrjacobs.com as well.
jimrjacobs.com. I will link to that as well on AnnetteTalks.com. Feel free to comment on there. Reach out to me at AnnetteTalks.com or on my Facebook page, Annette Talks, or go to patreon.com/Annette Talks if you want to help support me. Thank you for joining us here today, Jim, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. And thank you for listening to LDS Unmarried Life, and where LDS singles gather.
I'm gonna bloom where I'm planted. I won't take things for granted. Come what may, bring it on. I'm gonna love it.